Mother-in-law tried to have me arrested for not allowing her in my house. This happened a long time ago, but after reading some posts on here reminded me of this. When my daughter was little, before she started preschool, she is now 36, she would have difficulty breathing after visiting my Mill's house or any place that allowed smoking. This was back in the mid 1980s, when you could still smoke in restaurants and such. My wife, now ex-wife, and I do not smoke. Finally, after one such occasion, that my daughter was having problems breathing while at home, it was bad enough that we took her to the clinic. After examining my daughter, the doctor asked if we smoked. After telling him no, he asked if anyone in our house or extended family did. At that time, Mill was a heavy smoker, and she was the only person that wild smoke inside our house. We had friends that smoked come visit, but they didn't smoke in our house. The doctor explained that my daughter was showing signs of a mild allergic reaction to secondhand smoke. It was mild enough that treatment wasn't necessary, but we needed to limit or avoid exposing her to people that smoked. Mill and I had never been on good terms, but it got much worse after I posted no smoking signs inside our house. She saw them, but said it didn't apply to her because she was grandma. She usually avoided visiting when I was home and my ex wouldn't stand up to her. Finally, Mill came to visit while I was home. She came strolling in puffing away. After I asked her, politely, to put the cigarette out, she refused, saying that she had the right to visit her grandchildren however she wanted. I then asked her politely to leave, and she pretty much ignored me. Now I need to add something here. I was raised to be polite and to respect others, and that was reinforced by my Marine Corps training. There are some exceptions to me being a nice guy, such as putting my children or wife in danger, as Mill soon found out. Since she wouldn't take me seriously and refused to leave, I physically picked her up and took her outside. At that time she was much heavier than me, but she had finally pushed me over my limits. I set her down on the driveway next to her car and told her to go home. I went back inside and locked the door behind me. My wife didn't say a word, but she was smiling because she knew I could get away with treating her mother like that. Of course that wasn't the end of that fight. Our neighbors had been old drinking buddies with my wife's parents, so Mill stormed over to their house and called the cops on me claiming assault. It's a small town and I know a lot of the cops, but the two that show up I've never met. Since Mill called them and she met them in my driveway, by the time they start knocking on my door they were planning to arrest me. However, I'm not dumb enough to open the door. After they hear my side and the fact that Mill didn't look roughed up, their attitude quickly changed. After showing my ID with the address given to them by Mill, they stepped back from the door and talk a bit. A few minutes later one cop comes back up the steps to talk to me, while the other one went to talk to her. His next question actually surprised me. I've had a few not so nice meetings with police. He asked if I wanted to press charges, breaking and entering, trespassing, assault. Domestic violence was not a thing back then against Mill. Tempting, but no. My ex is an only child, and I'm not going to forbid grandma from seeing any of my 4 kids, as long as it's on my terms. That is no smoking. Instead I said I just wanted her off my property, and that she will have to call before coming over. Side note, after this incident she no longer talked directly to me, unless I answered the phone, so that was a small victory for me. Relations with Mill were pretty much gone. I rarely saw her, even though she also lived in that small town. But that's a whole different story. Entitled grandma trained her daughter well, because after 19 years, I finally had enough of ex's entitled attitude and I divorced her. Neither ex or ex-Mill no longer talk to me. No hurt feelings on my part. They don't talk to each other even, something I had wished for back when my children were little. I have asthma, and when it got really bad, the smokers in my extended family voluntarily went outside to smoke. Even in winter, and on Christmas Day, when I would gladly let them stay inside the warm. They go outside. Nobody living in my home smokes, so it makes me feel deeply cherished. My daughter and I were both diagnosed with asthma as adults. Mine is very mild. The only time I have any problems is if I have been working outside in extreme cold, temperatures below 0 Fahrenheit. As long as I keep my mouth and nose covered while I'm working outside, I rarely have any problems. My daughter has some serious health issues and her asthma just adds to those. She does occasionally need her inhaler. I have severe asthma that makes it so whenever I come into contact with certain types of cats my throat swells up to the point where I can't breathe and have to go to the ER. My BFF's husband is like that. When X and I had one cat that would usually hide when people were over, they could come over and he'd have no problems. Our second cat, who was very outgoing, caused him to have a serious reaction, even if he had no contact. Imagine risking the relationship with your grandchildren over a ducking cigarette. Yes, that is a petty reason and I wouldn't have done this just for that reason. But that wasn't the only issue. I could probably write a book. From day one, she had this habit of just showing up any time of day or night unannounced and just walk in. Locked doors didn't stop her. More than once my ex got called down to one of the bars on Main Street to get her very drunk, very obnoxious mother out of their bar. Ex's father died in an accident less than 2 months after we moved in together. Mill was impossible to get along with and her smoking in my house had been an issue for years. In an effort to keep the peace, other than asking her to not smoke in my house, I didn't push it. But when it started affecting my kids I would not allow it. Our extended families and many friends were smokers, but they all agreed not to smoke in my house or around my children. How ducking hard is it to step outside to have a cig? I hate the way homes smell that have people smoking inside. The smoke sticks to everything, and it's hard to breathe even without having health issues. Growing up, my aunt and uncles used to smoke inside my grandma's house. I forget why the change happened, but at some point the rule became no smoking inside, and they would all go to the garage with the garage door open or the porch to smoke. How rude to go to someone else's home and puff away when they do not. At the time of this story, the 1980s, smoking indoors was considered acceptable. Hell, even as late as early 2000s. Kinda bullshit, but it is what it is. It wasn't until the early 2000s that people started having enough of the indoor smoking that it became socially unacceptable. And in many places laws were passed making it illegal to smoke indoors anywhere except your own home. The thing that kills me about it is that to smoke inside constantly, you've got to have no shame whatsoever. It'll turn walls yellow. The smell never goes away. Ashes always end up everywhere, no matter how many ashtrays you have. It's just kind of gross. I'm even a smoker, and I hate smoking indoors. It's pretty trashy, in my opinion. Also super inconsiderate for anyone who happens to come around it. Edit. Proofreading is not my strong point and my phone will fill in words for me, but not always the right words. When tracking the doctor about smokers in my house, I typed in Mill would smoke. Phone changed that to Mill wild smoke. Don't worry, autocorrect lucks sometimes. It's a special type of self-centered a-hole that would purposefully smoke around a kid that had a bad reaction to it. I had a funny visual of you carting her out of your house as she continued to puff away. Thanks for posting your story. Yeah, I was kind of surprised myself. My wife was shocked, but she was well aware of my temper, and if I'm in a stressful situation and I suddenly lower my voice to normal levels, something is going to happen. I was not abusive towards my wife or children, and even before we were together, I promised her that if I was angry with her, I would not touch her. I've kept that promise since 1979. I was diagnosed with chronic bronchitis when I was around 12 years old. Everyone in my immediate family smoked. My mom and stepdad limited their smoking to one room of the house to limit my exposure to it, and they only allowed other family members and guests to smoke in this room. My dad, on the other hand, did not care. No one was going to tell him he couldn't smoke, not even the health of his child. If I had a problem with it, then I had to leave. My dad's place was really small, so this usually meant I had to go outside. It would have been nice if he had shown at least some concern. It wasn't so much that I was the one who had to leave when he smoked. It was the fact that anytime we went out it was always the smoking section. Back when this was still a thing, and he never made the attempt to exhale his smoke away from me. He liked going to a local restaurant regularly for coffee. I would get hot chocolate, and sometimes for dessert or a meal. It would have been nice if he could have refrained from smoking during those times and let us sit in the non-smoking section. at the very least. She saw them, but said it didn't apply to her because she was grandma. Wait, WTF? What kind of logic is that? Entitled logic. Rules for thee, but not for me. Did you get full custody of your 4 kids, or did Emil and your ex win? Also, I grew up where my dad smoked, US Navy, and proud Navy brat and proud grandson of a US Marines, but the one thing he never did was smoke around us 4 kids. Never smoked in the house. And if he wanted to smoke while driving with us kids in the van, he would keep the window cracked and the cigarette outside of it. By the time of the divorce, 3 of the kids were adults and the youngest was 17. I was still very much in love with my ex, but I couldn't deal with her anymore. So I was pretty generous with the divorce, custody, and property settlement. I know. Pretty stupid, but I'm much better off now. Ex and her husband, 3rd one. I was her 2nd, but we had dated in high school, so I just thought of the first husband as a speed bump, are struggling to survive. They own no property. Their best car is a 1970s pickup. And ex hasn't been able to hold a job for more than 2 years. Yes, I'm a bit obsessed with her, but I don't have to keep tabs on her. We have mutual friends that feel the need to tell me the details. Possibly because they helped her cover up things that happened during the marriage. Speaking of mutual friends, many of them stopped talking to her. Also, friends covered up things? Great friends. Sorry, it's always weird what people will cover up for others too. The ones that still talk to her are no longer on my friends list. Others that helped her did so because of her lies about me. Ex managed to get all 4 children on her side at first, so I'm not surprised about friends helping her. The fact that I wasn't around to defend myself didn't help. Her lies kept 3 of the 4 away from my wedding to my current wife. The 4th one only showed up because I was going to give her the extra car I had. Kids and friends believed that my current wife caused the divorce. The kids and some friends now understand that I didn't even know my new wife until over a year after I moved out. There had been several instances of infidelity on her part, of which I wasn't even aware of until long after the divorce. Had I known, someone would have been dead. Him for sure. Her maybe. Sorry you went through that, and that your kids got that negative impact from your ex. Happy that it sounds like they were able to have open minds and evaluate facts. Good luck. Why didn't she just leave it? Isn't that hard to use your legs? She refused to leave or put out her cigarette, which is why I picked her up and carried her outside. BTW. She is not a small woman, and I'm only a little above average in height and build. Thanks to the Marine Corps, I have learned a lot of confidence in just what I'm capable of. This wasn't the first time I've needed to do something like that. Put me in danger doesn't bother me much, but endanger the ones I love, and I turn into a grizzly bear. That is disrespectful that she won't leave. I applaud you for standing up for your child. My parents were both chain smokers. When I finally was taken to allergist, my dad suggested it, and it was determined that I wasn't breathing funny when I ate because I was a disgusting, annoying little bitch / shit, my mother's theory, but rather that I had allergies which made it hard for me to breathe. Also, the allergist explained secondhand smoke was bad for me. This was in the late 1970s, before it was widely known it was unhealthy. My dad, God bless him, at least tried to angle his smoke away from me and would open windows in the home or car. My mother wouldn't want to open windows if it was cold or would mess up her hair. She'd continue smoking, muff my coughing, and say I was faking it. She also got a cat, even though I was allergic to them. We didn't get a dog because my brother was allergic to dogs. Even my stepfather was more concerned about my breathing than my mother was. Needless to say, my mother and I didn't have a good relationship. We were estranged when she died, and my only regret was not going no contact sooner, or letting the first no contact stay. She couldn't quit smoking or smoke outside. She even did that thing where she told us to hide her cigarettes. No matter what, don't tell her where they were, and then went crazy / angry when I listened to her. I don't even have full recall of that one. There's a gap between being cornered by an angry, nicotine deprived mother in a utility room and my dad getting home. I was equally afraid to tell her. because I didn't know if she'd freak out because I disregarded what she originally said. However, when her own health was endangered, she managed to quit and stay away from cigarettes. I hope your daughter's situation is okay. Jesus Christ. What a shit situation. I'm so sorry. Thanks. Therapy and distance helped a lot. I'm allergic to Essex and secondhand to the point I can't breathe and break out in a rash. For the grandma to purposely do that to her grandchild is top level asshole Karen stupidity. Good on you for taking the trash out, my friend, good on you. When I was a kid I used to get a headache when I was near a heavy smoker, or if someone smoked up wine from me. I don't get them anymore. But I have had a visceral dislike of smokers since childhood. And it never really went away. I agree. The grandma had no business anywhere near that child if she couldn't refrain from smoking indoors. Same. When I was younger we used to not care where we sat in a restaurant. Then at some point I started complaining that the smoke made me sick or something. Then we started only sitting in non-smoking sections. More recently I have not cared about hanging outside with the smokers I know for conversation's sake. I wish smoking was banned though, like prohibition. When said heavy smoker, did you the stuff she was smoking was strong? Or that she could trough a pack or two in a day? Back then I would say at least 1 pack a day. If she was drinking she went through a lot more. You were a good dad to your child. I recently developed breathing issues due to secondhand smoke. It's extremely depressing as my father, whom I'm very close with, is unable to stop smoking. While he only smokes outside, he smells of smoke so strongly that when he walks past me sometimes I can't breathe. I can't hug him and might not be able to have him walk me down the aisle when I marry due to it. It destroyed me for a good few months when I thought about how negatively it has impacted our relationship. I hope he will quit one day, but by then I may not be living in the same country. I hope he does it for his own health though, and the people around him. Thank you for the good dad part. I'm sorry about the health issues you are currently having. In no way, shape or form do I consider myself as a great dad. I made, and still make, many mistakes. The biggest ones were not protecting my kids from their mother and trusting her. As a trucker, I would be away for 4 or more weeks, then spend a week at home, then back out again. I have a second chance though. Wife #2, and I have a son, now 13. I spend as much time with him as I can with him, at least as much as any teenager will tolerate. Because of COVID, we have spent a lot more time together. I learned a lot of things by being an absentee parent, and I'm doing my best to not make those mistakes again. Karen-in-law. Even if you had no allergic reactions to cigarette smoke, you should allow nobody to smoke in your house. The day I had such a bad reaction to secondhand smoke that I stopped breathing for 5 minutes was the day all smokers in my family were ordered to smoke outside or quit. My uncle quit. He switched to those dumb suckers instead. An aunt also quit, switching to toothpicks. Oh man, I feel this one. I'm also allergic to cigarettes and smoke, and my Phil is a heavy smoker. Once we went over to his place for dinner and a friend and friend's wife of my Phil came as well. We asked them not to smoke around me since I'd get sick, and my Phil, that everyone considers an asshole, soft spot for me, would leave the room to smoke. His friends lit up multiple times after we reminded them not to. I was sitting as far as I could with my sweater over my face. Finally Phil came back, saw them smoking, and had some words for them. So many people are just like, oh, it's only cigarette smoke, but it's still an allergy. You won't say, oh, it's just a peanut, as you hand someone a peanut if they're allergic. I have 3 kids with mild asthma. We never allowed smoking around them. When my daughter was about 3, we were visiting with my aunt, a heavy smoker at the time. My aunt is great about not smoking around us. Always has been. She won't even smoke in her own home if we are visiting. So my daughter had never seen anyone light a cigarette. She asked my aunt why she was setting herself on fire. My aunt put her cigarette and lighter down and said it was a really good question with no good answers. Love it. I just don't understand why the health and safety of her grandchild wasn't more important than the cigarettes. If she supposedly cares about her grandchild so much that she drops by unannounced and wants to spend so much time with her, why doesn't smoking outside seem like a rational solution? Good question. Never got an answer from her. I'm glad you stood your ground. It seems disrespectful to smoke in someone's house if they themselves don't smoke. Exactly this. My parents won't even smoke in my car without asking me first if it's okay. Just so rude to assume you can duck up so someone else's air like that, mayo. Both my parents chain smoked. My dad was and is a 3-pack a day smoker, my mom 1.5. I now have several health problems from it. My mom died in 05 from a heart attack after a quadruple bypass and valve repair because she left the hospital a week after surgery because she couldn't smoke. I know those feels. I had breathing issues as an infant because I was born to smokers. I wish somebody I knew stood up to them. The frick is happening above me? Hubby smokes and I don't. I'm a bitch, and so is hubby. You smoke in our house, you are out. Don't care who you are. Wasn't this an episode of Malcolm in the Middle? It's possible. I never really watched that show. What little I have seen was too hard to watch because it was too much like my household before the divorce. I've been a smoker for 34 years. I know. I'm gonna die of something. People, I'm too old for lectures. Started in the late 80s. I would never, ever, in my life as a smoker, demand to smoke in someone else's house, especially around a child I cared about who was sensitive to smoke. That's just fracking ridiculous. Notice how she came to visit said granddaughter, but didn't care for her safety. Exactly. Jesus Christ. My BFS parents chain smoked all throughout his childhood. Steve smoked so much inside that the house will probably always smell like smoke. Yes, it's their house, so technically they can do what they want. But I can't imagine what 18 years of constant secondhand smoke has done to his lungs. It makes me so angry that they cared more about smoking than the health of their own child. Yeah, that's gonna be from me. What kind of grandma would make her own grandchildren's life unpleasant or even endanger it? Even my Mill's mother, who is a very heavy smoker, goes outside to smoke if my kids show up. Just wow. Is it really hard when you enter someone's home respects their rules? That's simple, especially with smoking where the smell can stay in furniture and clothes for a long time. BTW, I'm smoking myself, but still go smoke outside when at no smoking place. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.